introduced my wife to their wives, and they took my wife in another room, and there's two big oak doors there, and there's about 15 colonels, and all of a sudden, the general hadn't come down to this big building yet, and all of a sudden, here started these cars coming in with second lieutenants by the dozens, all dressed up in blue uniforms, and spurs on some of them. There's about 200 of them. And I said, Colonel, what's going on here tonight? He said, don't you know? You're the guest speaker. Well, I almost fainted. I wasn't prepared to talk to 200 men. A lot of them had gone to every college in the country and took ROTC and West Point and everywhere, and got their commissions and went to Fort Knox for their training in armor. Well, the general come down, they opened up the big doors, and about all waiters standing around in white jackets, and the general come down, and at the head table, Colonel this and Colonel this and Colonel this, and cards, and Major General Bell commanding. Now where they got this, I don't know. The distinguished Lieutenant Colonel Gilliam, guest speaker. Well, I felt pretty low. Didn't know what I was going to say to them. Wasn't prepared to make no talk to 200. And so they set a table up out in the center, and they poured about 4 gallons of Kentucky bourbon in. And here come that head waiter. Said, General, what will you have? I'm sitting with the general talking. He said, fix me a double. And he looked at me and said, how about you, sir? I said, make mine the same. Well, we talked, and I said, General, why don't you tell me this is not going to be formal? I'm not prepared to make no... Now, Gilliam, just to tell us about your experience with General Chaffee. You're the only living human being can do that. And here come that waiter back. Said, General, will you have another? I said, yes, fix me another double. He looked at me and he said, I said, yeah, make mine the same. Now, gentlemen, that was 2 doubles on an empty stomach. And you know what? They had a speaker's microphone. They recorded my talk. And I talked for about 45 minutes. Didn't have big trouble talking to them. Well, I finished my talk and headed back to sit down with the generals at the head table. Those 200 second lieutenants stood up. They gave me the dangest applause I could ever heard in my life, and it was embarrassing. And I didn't want to sit down, and they were clapping, and I finally said, boys, sit down. Well, anyway, I had a good time at that. Well, anyway, let me go back a little bit. And after 3 years with General Chaffee, I was discharged in 1940. And my parents had moved over to Little Cold Camp Jenkins, Kentucky. So I come home, and I went back and I had General Chaffee to give me a recommendation for the aviation cadets. And he gave me a wonderful recommendation. And the war was warming up a little bit then. We didn't have many planes, and our aircraft, they were building. And I stayed home for 7 months as an aviation cadet, receiving my pay. And they finally called me into, I went to Maxfield, Alabama, and started that aviation cadet program. I went through the aviation cadets and got my commission as a second lieutenant at Lukeville, Arizona. I was trained in fighter pilots, flying P-40s, AT-6s and P-40s. And Barry Goldwater was a captain, and I was a second lieutenant. He checked me out in P-40s at Lukeville, Arizona. Well, now here's an interesting point. On the bulletin board, it say no buzzing trains. Well, from Lukeville out to Phoenix, on that desert country going out to Tucson, out to California, these troop trains would be going. And when I'd check out a plane for a couple hours, practice flight, I couldn't wait to buzz the train. You dive down like that, and they'd wave at you and you pull up. Well, that was against the rules. It said no buzzing plane, no buzzing trains. So I was a buzzing a train one day out from Tucson in the flat desert, and those big cactus things were. And I was a buzzing the train real low, and I felt something thump. I thought I hit a bird, and I pulled up and leveled off. I hit the top of one of those cactuses and caved that wing in. So I landed. Of course, they knew I checked the plane out, and I taxied way up the end of the ramp, parked it. Had a 4 and 5. If you had low oil pressure or anything, you'd make a note. And the plane would be redlined to the maintenance officer and mechanics fixed it. So I got out, and I cleaned that green stuff off where it hit the cactus. And I didn't put anything in the 4 and 5. I went on back to the back officer quarters, didn't eat any supper. Didn't sleep a wink that night. Thought the MPs would come and get me. Thought my flying days would be over, been court-martialed. Next morning I got up and didn't eat any breakfast. Walked out on the flight line, walked up, and there was some mechanics and the maintenance officer and a few sergeants standing around the plane. And I said, "Sergeant, what's going on here?" He said, "Some damn fool backed a 6x6 truck into that wing last night." Well, I went back and ate a good breakfast. That ended my buzzing day. But then, the war got warmed up, and the colonel called me in. Said, "Gilliam, I'm going to have to take you out of fighters and send you into B-17 Flying Fortress," it was known as. Transition. Oh, I said, "Colonel, I want to stay in fighters." "Nope, got to send you." So I went through the B-17 transition. And I learned to love that old B-17. It had a lot of inherent stability. It had a lot of firepower. It gave a lot of punishment, take a lot of punishment. So, I was down in Florida and got orders to come up to Savannah, Georgia and pick up a brand new B-17. I left Orlando, Florida to Trinidad to Belém, Brazil, Belém to Rio, crossed the South Atlantic to Dakar, Africa, and then crossed the Sahara Desert to Marrakech and Casablanca. And then we did missions then against the Germans up in Tunisia. And I was shot down on the Schweinfurt raid. And I was put first in a few jails in Germany and wound up in Frankfurt on the 5th floor of a jail in Frankfurt. And the British hit us every night. And all the German guards would head out for the air raid shelters when the air raid sirens go. And us Americans and British hollering, "Take us with you, take us with you." And one of the meanest German sergeants I believe I've ever met. He'd come up out of the bomb shelters and come by the cell with the Americans was in. And I'll be plain English, he'd say, "You baby-killing bastards, did you bomb any baby carriages last night?" The next morning, "Did you bomb any churches last night?" He'd cuss it out every morning. One morning he must have slept pretty good, and the British hadn't hit us too bad. I said, "Hey, Sergeant, come here." And he come over to the cell there I was in front. And he cussed me. I said, he said, "What do you want, you baby-killing bastard?" I said, "Sergeant, I want to ask you a question." I said, "Why are you so mean to us Americans, and how comes you speak such good English?" And he gave me another cussing. He said, "I'll tell you why." He said, "I was a butcher in Chicago for 25 years, and I come over here to visit my folks, and you bastards killed every one of them in a bombing raid." Well, anyway, I stayed in jail in Frankfurt for about a month or two, and they finally took us out and put us on the train with guards in one end, German guards, and us laying in straw in the other. And I wound up in Stalag Luft 1, way up on the Baltic coast. And was about half British, about half Americans. A lot of the British were captured at Dunkirk, and a lot of them were Air Force pilots, Royal Air Force, that got shot down like us.